I knew from the start that people like him never looked at people like me. And yet, the first time our eyes met across the crowded campus quad, I felt the cruel punchline of the universe land squarely in my chest. It was supposed to be a Joachim, the invisible library rat who never raised his voice above a whisper. Staring at him, the music star whose songs turned every hallway into a stage. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized it wasn't funny at all. It was dangerous. His name was Adrian Vega, the golden boy of Westfield University, the one everyone talked about. His posters hung in dorm rooms, his voice flooded Spotify playlists, and whenever he stepped into the cafeteria, it was like watching the Red Sea part. People moved, gravitated, reached for him. He had that kind of gravity. Me? I was Noah. No flashy surname, no legacy, no voice worth hearing. Just Noah, a scholarship kid from the Midwest, surviving on ramen cups and the scent of dusty books. Nobody gravitated toward me, and I liked it that way. Or at least I thought I did. The night everything shifted, I was working late at the library. My job was simple. Scan returns, shelve books, keep the peace. But around midnight, when the shadows grew long and silence pressed heavy, I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear. A melody raw, unpolished, dripping with heartbreak. And there he was, Adrian Vega, sitting cross-legged on the carpet between the shelves of music history, strumming his guitar like the world had shrunk down to just him and the strings. No cameras, no fans, no bravado. Just a boy with closed eyes and a cracked open soul. I should have walked away, but I didn't. Didn't think anyone came here this late, I said before I could stop myself. His head snapped up, eyes wide. For a second, he looked like a cornered animal. Then his lips curved into that smile, the one that could melt ice cream faster than July sun. Didn't think anyone worked this late, he shot back. And just like that, the law of attraction kicked in. The one that doesn't listen to logic, that doesn't care about status, that pulls opposites into collision courses they can't escape. The problem? Attraction wasn't safe for someone like me. Not when the whole school worshipped him. Not when society was already stacked against boys who loved boys. But I couldn't unsee the way he looked at me that night, like I wasn't invisible after all. The next day, I told myself it had been nothing. Passing glance, a fleeting moment. Yet by lunchtime, I was already proven wrong. I was sitting at my usual spot far corner of the dining hall, tray balanced between my elbows, pretending my laptop was more interesting than human interaction when it happened. Adrian walked in. The cafeteria buzzed instantly, voices rising, chairs scraping. As though Beyoncé herself had graced the room. People flocked. And yet, somehow, impossibly, his gaze found mine. Across all the noise, all the eyes, he found me. Then, in front of everyone, he crossed the room. Mind if I sit here? A hush fell, like the universe itself was holding its breath. I should have said no. I should have spared myself. But instead, I nodded. His tray clattered onto the table, his grin bright enough to blind. Good, he said. Because everyone else just wants to talk about my set list, and I'm sick of it. You don't like talking about your music? I asked, incredulous. I don't like talking about what everyone thinks my music is, he corrected, leaning in, lowering his voice. You heard me last night. That wasn't for them. That was for me. The cafeteria didn't matter anymore. The stares, the whispers, the raised eyebrows, none of it reached me. All I could feel was the weight of his confession pressing between us. And that was the beginning. Of course, beginnings are never as innocent as they seem. Because the moment Adrian Vega sat at my table, I stopped being invisible. Suddenly, I was a target. People whispered my name, the one they never cared to learn before. Noah, the library rat. Noah, the nobody. Now, Noah, the guy Adrian Vega talked to. The questions started small. Who was I? Why me? Then they got sharper. What did I want from him? Was I using him? Did I even belong in the same room as him? And through it all, Adrian kept coming back. To the library, to the cafeteria, to my side. First, I thought it was pity. Then curiosity. Then something else, something far more dangerous. Because late at night, when the campus slept, and it was just the two of us in the glow of the library lamps, I caught him staring. Not the way fans stared at him, not the way professors praised him. No, this was different. His eyes softened, searching, as if he saw past my defenses, past the walls I'd built, into the quiet ache I thought I'd hidden. And one night, he whispered it, the thing I hadn't dared imagine. Noah, do you ever feel like you're not allowed to want the things you really want? The air froze between us. Yes, I admitted, because lying would have broken me. His hand brushed mine across the desk. Just a touch. Just enough to set fire to everything I'd been trying to keep buried. And in that moment, the law of attraction didn't just pull us closer, it consumed us. But love, I learned quickly, isn't a private thing. Not when one half of it belongs to someone like Adrian Vega. Rumors spread. Photos leaked. A blurry shot of us leaving the library together at 1 a.m. A whisper in the dorm hallways. By the end of the week, half the campus was convinced Adrian Vega had found a secret boyfriend, and the other half hated me for it. You think you can just climb up the ladder by holding his hand? One guy sneered at me in the locker room. You're ruining him. Another spat, voice low but sharp. But the worst wasn't from strangers. It was from Adrian's world, the managers, the promoters, the people who saw his heart as nothing more than a brand to be protected. They cornered him. They warned him. They reminded him of his image, his career, the millions of streams and followers that could vanish in a second. And I heard it, all of it, because one night, he stormed into the library, fists clenched, eyes wet, whispering words that broke me. They want me to stay away from you. My chest caved. Then, maybe you should. He looked at me like I'd stabbed him. Is that what you want? I couldn't answer, because the truth was, I wanted him more than I wanted air. But love in this world wasn't just about wanting. It was about surviving. And survival meant letting go. That was the night I tried to end it. I told him we were different worlds, that it was never meant to last, that I didn't want to be the reason he lost everything. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just stared, silent tears streaking down his face, before whispering one sentence that haunts me still. You were the only one who ever saw me. Then he walked away, and I thought that was the end. But endings, I would later learn, are just illusions. Because love, once sparked, doesn't go out so easily. It waits. It pulls. It bends the world in ways you can't predict. And no matter how much you run, the law of attraction never stops working. The week after Adrian walked out of the library was the loneliest of my life. Campus looked the same, students rushing to class, coffee cups clutched like lifelines, laughter spilling from dorm windows, but everything in me felt hollowed out. I went through the motions, shelving books, taking notes, pretending I wasn't unraveling, pretending I hadn't just ripped out my own heart and handed it back to him. But pretending doesn't fool anyone for long. Not when the whole school was watching. The rumors didn't stop just because we weren't sitting together anymore. If anything, they grew sharper, uglier. My classmates whispered in lecture halls. My professors gave me sympathetic looks they thought I didn't notice. Strangers stared like I'd stolen something that never belonged to me. And every time I passed the music building, I heard his voice spilling from the practice rooms, raw, jagged, cracked in ways it hadn't been before. Like even his music knew something was broken. I thought keeping my distance would protect him. That if I made myself the villain of my own story, he'd be safe. That the managers and promoters breathing down his neck would leave him alone. But one night, fate decided to remind me just how little control I really had. It was Friday, the campus buzzing with anticipation for the annual fall concerto, massive event where Adrian was, of course, headlining. I had told myself I wouldn't go, couldn't go, but the sound carried across the quad, drawing me like a moth to flame. I found myself standing at the edge of the crowd, hidden in the shadows of the oak trees, watching him step onto the stage. The cheers were deafening. Lights painted his hair gold, his smile dazzling enough to blind. He looked every inch the star, the boy who belonged to everyone but himself. And then he sang. The first notes pierced through me, because it wasn't the polished, upbeat anthem the crowd expected. It was the song I'd heard in the library. The one he'd played when he thought no one was listening. His voice cracked on the chorus, And for a moment, just one, his eyes scanned the crowd, past the front rows of adoring fans, past the cameras raised high, until they landed on me. And just like that, the world disappeared. Couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only stand there as thousands of people screamed his name, while his gaze held mine like a tether neither of us could break. When the song ended, the crowd roared. But I knew it wasn't for them. It was for me. And that was the moment I realized that no matter how hard I tried to end it, the law of attraction had already won. After the concert, I tried to escape unnoticed, slipping away before the crowd dispersed. But I hadn't made it far when I heard his voice. Noah! I froze. He was running toward me, sweat still glistening on his forehead, guitar slung across his back, security guards calling after him. Noah, wait! I wanted to run. God, I wanted to run. But when he caught my wrist, all the strength drained out of me. Why did you come? He demanded, breathless. I shouldn't have, I said, my voice breaking. His grip tightened. Then why did you? Because I couldn't stay away. Because every part of me ached for him. Because no matter how much I lied to myself, he was the gravity pulling me back. But I didn't say any of that. I just needed to see you sing. His face softened, pain etched in every line. And did you hear me? I swallowed hard. Yes. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since the night we ended. Then, before I could stop him, he pulled me into him right there, in the shadows behind the concert hall, his arms crushing me to his chest like he never wanted to let go. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't fight it. The kiss didn't happen that night. Maybe because we were both too scared, or maybe because we knew once it happened, there'd be no turning back. But after that moment, we couldn't pretend anymore. He started coming to the library again, late at night when the world was asleep. We didn't always talk. Sometimes we just sat across from each other, breathing the same air, letting silence speak what words couldn't. Other times, he played for me, songs he hadn't shown anyone else, lyrics that spoke of fear, longing, the ache of being seen yet unseen. And I wrote, scribbling notes in my journal, because the music he gave me demanded to be remembered. And slowly, carefully, we let ourselves fall again. This time, it was different. We knew the risks. We knew the storm waiting outside. But between those shelves, under the glow of flickering lamps, it felt like we'd carved out a piece of the world that belonged only to us. Until the storm found us anyway. It happened on a Thursday. We were in the library, his hand brushing mine under the table, when the door creaked open. A camera flash blinded me. By the time my vision cleared, it was too late. The next morning, the photo was everywhere. Adrian Vega, campus golden boy, holding hands with a nobody in the library. The caption was cruel, the comments worse. And suddenly, it wasn't just whispers in hallways anymore. It was headlines, blogs, forums tearing apart my name, my face, my worth. By noon, I was called into the dean's office. By 2, my inbox overflowed with threats. By 5, I had strangers waiting outside my dorm, screaming Adrian's name, screaming at me. But the worst part wasn't any of that. It was Adrian's silence. For 2 days, I didn't hear from him. Not a text, not a call, nothing. And for the first time, I wondered if maybe this was where our story really ended. On the 3rd day, he came. I was sitting on the steps outside the library, head buried in my hands, when his shadow fell over me. Noah, he whispered. I looked up, and my heart cracked at the sight of him. He looked wrecked, eyes bloodshot, shoulders slumped, like the weight of the world had finally broken him. I'm sorry, he said, voice raw. They told me to stay away, that if I didn't, I'd lose everything. And, I croaked. He knelt in front of me, his hands trembling as they reached for mine. And I realized I don't care. Because losing you would be worse. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled. Adrian. He cupped my face, his thumbs brushing away the wetness. I don't want to hide anymore. Not from them. Not from anyone. I want you. And before I could think, before fear could stop me, I kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate, messy, aching. The kind of kiss that tasted like everything we'd been through and everything we still had to face. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "Let them try to take this from me," he whispered. "They'll have to kill me first." And for the first time, I believed him. But love, I soon learned, isn't just about two people. It's about the world that decides whether to let them exist. And the world wasn't going to make this easy. The kiss outside the library should have been our triumph. But in reality, it was the beginning of a war. By morning, the photo was everywhere again, but this time, it wasn't just whispers and speculation. It was confirmation. Adrian Vega had kissed another boy, and that boy was me. The backlash was immediate. Half the campus split into camps. The supporters, waving rainbow flags and chanting his name, and the haters, scrawling slurs on bathroom walls and plastering my dorm door with notes that told me to get out. The world beyond the university was even harsher. Headlines screamed betrayal, articles debated his future, talk shows questioned his lifestyle. His fan base fractured overnight. Some defended him fiercely, others burned posters and threw his CDs into bonfires they proudly filmed for TikTok. And through it all, I became the scapegoat. "You ruined him," strangers hissed as I walked past. "He was perfect until you showed up. Freak." The first time I found my car keyed with the word rat, I stood frozen in the parking lot for 10 whole minutes, staring at the jagged letters carved into the paint. It wasn't even my carrot, it was the university's old sedan I borrowed for library errands, but the message was clear enough. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to vanish back into invisibility. But every time I reached for that old armor, that old instinct to hide, Adrian was there, pulling me back into the light. One evening, he slipped through the crowd of protesters outside the library, grabbed my hand, and tugged me into a side alley. "Why are you doing this?" I demanded, voice cracking. "Why aren't you just pretending you don't exist?" His eyes blazed. "Because I can't, Noah. I won't. You're not some mistake I can erase. But look at what they're doing to you." His laugh was bitter. "You think this is new? You think I haven't felt their claws before? At least now I get to fight for something real." His words left me reeling. Because I'd been so focused on protecting him that I'd forgotten Adrian Vega wasn't someone who lived quietly. He was someone who lived loudly, unapologetically, even when it burned. And now he wanted to live loudly for me. But loving him came at a cost, one that stretched far beyond campus. 2 weeks after the kiss, I was called into the dean's office again. Only this time, Adrian was waiting there too along with his manager, a man in his 40s with a sharp suit and a sharper tongue. "Mr. Vega," the manager said, voice like steel, "your contract explicitly forbids conduct that jeopardizes your marketability. This," he waved at me like I was a stain on the carpet, "is not marketable." Adrian stiffened. "You don't get to decide who I am." "I don't care who you are," the manager snapped. "I care about ticket sales, sponsorships, investors. You want to throw all of that away for what? A library assistant with a bad haircut." The words sliced through me, but before I could flinch, Adrian shot to his feet. "Say his name," he demanded. The manager blinked. "What?" "Say his name." Adrian's voice shook with fury. "It's Noah, and he's worth more than every check you'll ever wave in my face." The room went silent. For the first time, I realized how far he was willing to go. And for the first time, I was terrified he'd lose everything because of me. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in my narrow dorm bed, replaying the manager's words, replaying Adrian's defiance, replaying the way the world had turned against us. I thought about my scholarship, my future, my family back in the Midwest who still didn't know the truth about me. I thought about Adrian's career, the spotlight he'd worked his whole life to reach, and I wondered if love was enough. The next day, I tried to talk to him about it. Maybe we should slow down," I whispered, standing under the oak trees where we first met. "Maybe the timing is wrong." He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "Wrong timing? Noah, this isn't about timing. It's about us. But if being with me destroys your future, stop," he cut in sharply. Stop acting like you're poison. You're the only good thing that's happened to me in years. Tears stung my eyes. I don't want to be the reason you fall. He grabbed my shoulders, holding me steady. Then be the reason I rise. His words should have set me free. Instead, they chained me tighter. Because deep down, I still didn't believe I was strong enough to carry both our dreams. The next blow came from home. My phone buzzed with a call from my mother one Saturday afternoon. She never called during the semester, worried about long-distance charges, so I knew immediately something was wrong. Noah, she said, her voice tight. What is this we're seeing online? I froze. Your sister showed me the video, she continued, anger creeping in. You kissing that boy. Do you realize what people back home are saying? Do you realize what this means for us? For us? As if my love was a stain on our family's reputation. I didn't choose this, I whispered. Her silence was ice. Then unchoose it. Before it's too late. I hung up before she could hear me break. And when Adrian found me later that night, curled up in the library stairwell, he didn't ask what happened. He just sat beside me, wrapped his arm around my shoulders, and let me sob into his shirt. If there's one thing pain teaches you, it's who will stand and who will run. And Adrian stood. Even as the paparazzi swarmed campus, even as his fan base splintered, even as my family turned their back, she stood. He wrote songs about us. Not directly, never by name, but the truth pulsed beneath every lyric. He sang about invisible boys and burning secrets, about love too heavy for silence. And the more the world tried to erase me, the more he sang me back into existence. But standing came with a price. By the end of the semester, Adrian's label suspended his upcoming album release. Sponsors pulled out of his tour. Concerts were canceled. I watched him lose everything he'd built, one headline at a time. And the guilt nearly destroyed me. The night he got the call about his album being shelved, he showed up at my dorm, rain soaking his hair, eyes hollow. They've taken it all, he said, voice numb. I pulled him inside, wrapped him in a blanket, tried to dry the storm clinging to his skin. But nothing I did could warm the ice in his voice. They said I can have it back, he whispered finally. I froze. What do you mean? They'll release the album, restart the tour. If I let you go. The world stopped spinning. And, what did you say? I asked, barely breathing. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes. I told them no, he said. My heart cracked wide open. Adrian, I'd rather lose the world than lose you, he interrupted, fierce. I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. But you shouldn't have to choose. Maybe not, he admitted, pulling me into his arms. But if I do, then I'll choose you. Every time. And as his lips found mine, desperate and certain, I realized that our love was no longer something we could hide. It was a fight, and we were in it together. The semester ended with both quiet and thunder. The library felt emptier without his footsteps. Finals were over, and I should have felt relieved. But instead I felt hollow, like my heart had been scooped out and hidden somewhere in the shadows of the reading room. I didn't see him for 2 weeks. Not a glimpse in the hallway. Not a sighting in the courtyard. Not even his distinct, distant voice in a lecture that carried like the toll of a bell. Professors vanish into grading, committee meetings, and travel after semesters close, I told myself. But still, the absence gnawed at me. I walked into winter break carrying more silence than joy. It was in January when the silence broke. I had gone to the library late at night, one of the few places open. I wasn't even studying, I just wanted to sit in the corner chair where I had once watched him pace, where I had once collapsed in tears and found myself in his arms. That memory still burned, fragile and golden, like a flame that could vanish if I breathed too hard. The place was dim, nearly deserted. Snow pressed against the high windows, the world muffled. And then footsteps. Slow, precise, the rhythm etched into my bones. I turned before I had the courage to. It was him. His coat draped over one arm, his hair slightly unkempt, glasses glinting as if he'd just come in from the storm. He looked at me not with surprise, but with something unreadable, deep in his eyes, as if he had expected me there. "Professor," I whispered, standing too quickly, my pulse thundering. "Why are you here?" His voice was quiet, not sharp, not cold, just low, like snow falling. I wanted to study," I lied. He walked closer, every step deliberate. My body trembled the way it always did around him, pulled by an invisible current. "Lying doesn't suit you," he said. I froze. He stopped just inches away, his gaze piercing into mine. "You've been avoiding me?" I blurted out, before fear could hold me. His eyes flickered, and he exhaled slowly. "No, I've been avoiding myself." My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" He glanced away, toward the snow beating against the glass. For a long moment, silence stretched between us, fragile as ice. Then he spoke, softer than I had ever heard him. "Because when you cried in my arms that night, I stopped being your professor." My heart nearly stopped. He turned back to me, and I saw it behind the carefully built walls, behind the glass and frost. There was something fierce, restrained, burning. "Do you know what it's like," he said, his voice trembling, "to hold back every word you want to say, every gesture you want to make, because of rules? Because of the line between teacher and student?" My breath caught. "Then you—" "Yes," he whispered, cutting me off. "I wanted to hold you longer. I wanted to wipe your tears. I wanted to cross that line." The library felt too small for my racing heart. My legs trembled, but I forced myself closer, until I could feel the faint warmth radiating from him. "I've loved you from the beginning," I said, my voice breaking. The words shattered something in the air. He closed his eyes, as though the confession was both a relief and a knife. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do." My voice echoed louder than I intended, bouncing off the bookshelves. "I know you're cold, and distant, and impossible. I know you've hidden yourself behind rules and silence. But I don't care. I don't care about the line, I don't care about what people say. My throat tightened. I just want you." The snow outside battered harder against the windows. His hand clenched at his side, then loosened, trembling. "I can't," he whispered. "I shouldn't." But his body betrayed him. He leaned closer, just slightly, just enough that I could feel his breath against my lips. "Then don't think," I begged, my voice breaking. "Just let yourself want me." The distance snapped like a fragile string. He kissed me. It was not careful, not restrained. It was desperate, breaking years of silence in one stolen moment. His lips were cold from the snow, but the heat of him rushed through me like fire, thawing every frozen piece of my heart. I clutched his coat, my tears mingling with the kiss, and he pulled me in as though he had been starving for this, as though letting go would kill him. When we broke apart, both gasping, his forehead rested against mine. "You are going to ruin me," he whispered. "Then let me," I whispered back. But love, in the real world, doesn't end with a kiss. The months that followed were both heaven and hell. We saw each other in stolen moments in the library, in quiet cafes far from campus, in late-night phone calls where his voice softened only for me. But in class, in the halls, he was the same cold professor. Untouchable, distant, a stranger to anyone watching. It hurt. There were days when he passed by without a glance, days when he pushed me away out of fear. And yet there were also nights when he held me so close I thought we'd become one, whispering things he'd never dared to say aloud. "Someday," he would murmur, his lips against my hair. "Someday I won't have to hide." But someday felt so far. The breaking point came near graduation. Rumors had started. A student had seen us together once, too close, too unguarded. Whispers spread like wildfire. One afternoon he called me into his office. His face was pale, his eyes colder than ever, as though he had rebuilt every wall we had torn down. "It has to end," he said. My chest caved. "What?" "Our meetings, our calls, everything. It has to end." "No, yes." His voice cracked like glass. "If anyone finds out, I'll lose everything. My career, my name, my future. and you'll be dragged into it. I can't let that happen. Tears blurred my vision. So all of this, it meant nothing? He flinched but didn't answer. I slammed my hands against his desk, the sound shattering the silence. I don't care if the world finds out. I don't care what happens to me. Don't you understand? You're all I want. His eyes shone, but he stayed frozen, rigid, as though fighting a war inside himself. I love you, I said. The words ripped raw from my chest. I love you. And if you throw this away, you're not just protecting Mayuri destroying me. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping back. His face twisted, pain breaking through. For one wild moment, I thought he'd pull me into his arms. But instead he walked past me. The sound of the door closing behind him was louder than a gunshot. Graduation came. My name was called. I walked across the stage, but the applause was hollow. I searched for him in the crowd, but his seat was empty. I told myself it was over, that I'd move on, heal, let time wash the ache away. But love doesn't obey reason. It lingers, festers, burns quietly. Weeks later, when I was packing my dorm room for the last time, a knock came at the door. I opened it. He stood there. No glasses, no professor's mask, just him, raw and stripped, snow dusting his hair. I tried to stay away, he said, his voice hoarse. I tried to bury it, but I can't. I can't live pretending anymore. My throat tightened. Then, I don't care about the rules. I don't care about the world. The truth is, his voice broke. I love you, and I'd rather burn my career to the ground than lose you. I pulled him inside before the hallway could swallow us, and then his arms were around me, desperate, clinging, as though he feared I might vanish. For the first time, there were no barriers, no professor, no student, just two men, broken and whole in each other's arms. Years later, the world did find out. There were whispers, questions, raised brows. But by then, it didn't matter. We had built a life of our own, far from the halls of that university. A small apartment, shelves full of books, nights filled with quiet laughter and mornings with sunlight spilling across tangled sheets. And every winter, when snow pressed against the windows, I remembered the night I first found him again, the night the coldest professor became the man who finally let himself love me. Because love, real love, doesn't bow to rules. It breaks them. And in the breaking, we found forever. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.